This is All India Radio. In the program Insight, now we bring you a discussion on LPG Week 2022, Humanizing Energy and Significance of Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala scheme. The participants are Narendra Taneja, energy expert, and Arjun J. Chaudhary, AIR correspondent.
Mr. Taneja, could you tell us something about the significance of this LPG Week 2022, where all the industry players are participating along with the Union Minister?
Well, as you know, that LPG has kind of emerged as the most important and critical fuel for household, especially for domestic cooking across the country. And if you look at the LPG, LPG has been around for a very, very long time. But in the initial years, LPG was kind of, not considered that important. There was not sufficient push to take LPG to every household across the country. And that was the case with India and many other emerging economies and developing economies. But in India, the last 2016, we have seen the government has given it a major push as a part of the effort, A, to protect health of women and children, B, to make domestic gas available to a maximum number of households, 3, to protect environment, and of course with that the overall ecological balance and equilibrium in the country. So as part of this push, we have seen that this has become important. The result is this has been taken notice of by industry, LPG industry across the world. And since LPG is like liquefied petroleum gas, is different from natural gas. So it's basically petroleum in a bottle. And as you know that we are heavily dependent on imports for LPG and for practically all other petroleum or for crude oil. So this week basically highlights A, the importance of India in terms of LPG and the kind of push that government has given to LPG to take it to every household across the country. It's also used as an industrial fuel, as you know, and for transportation also. But in India, the major push is domestic, and that has emerged as a major driver. So this week and the forum, as you know, the forum is also taking place. The focus is exactly on this. A, India as a major LPG destination. B, India as a major LPG consumer. And C, of course, the role LPG is playing in terms of making sure that people also have the quality of air has improved, the quality of our life has improved, the quality of health of women and children, that has improved. So what we have achieved the last 6-7 years in particular has kind of gone across the world. World has taken notice of it. So in this week, the world has come to India, and of course, India is connecting with the world. So it has kind of, this week is like a platform, like an area and a platform connecting India with the whole world and the world connecting with India.
Mr. Taneja, as the gas cylinder is seen as the dispensing device for LPG, the liquefied petroleum gas you mentioned earlier, to households, are we likely to see a change from the gas cylinder as a device for dispensation to some other mode by which the LPG gas can be dispensed to households in a more cost-effective manner?
Well, good question. Eventually, of course, is going to be electricity everywhere. Every single household in our country, for instance, dependent on gas one way or another. In urban areas, PNG, that is a piped natural gas, which is natural gas, not LPG, which is different, which is even more eco-friendly. In urban areas that, people have access to PNG. But in most other small towns to rural areas on that is in majority of areas is LPG. But that's again kind of, since LPG is very good, healthy, certainly better than kind of fuels households have been using before. But at the same time, it's a kind of, you can call it the bridge energy for domestic purposes. In the sense, in time to come, since the government is also giving a major push to electricity, and what we are witnessing in India is a kind of electricity revolution. So in years to come, we're going to see electric vehicles all across the country, and we are also going to see electricity being used for cooking and for domestic energy purposes. But that said, at the same time, when we take a realistic view, I think, dispensation, as you said, and all that, LPG will continue to be the kind of mainstay, major fuel for domestic cooking, and even for industrial use for very, very long time to come. The electricity revolution is already has started, but it's going to long time before it really occupies a bigger space in terms of the overall energy mix in the country, or it replaces the LPG. That will eventually happen. But I think in 15, 17, 20 years, we're going to see LPG first everywhere.
So clearly the device on which cooking takes place is critical for the consumption of gases, whether it's LPG or it's piped natural gas versus electricity, whereby induction cookers are used. How do you see the sale of devices and its adoption by the public as a key reason why LPG is still a major factor in major households today?
The ultimate question is, are we going to continue to use fuel, that is LPG or piped natural gas, or is it going to be electricity at the end of the day? I mean, my sense is that, of course, it's going to be electricity all across the country, maybe 15 years from now, or 20 years from now, or maybe even sooner. But LPG, that probably will continue. But what we need, for instance, is probably more devices in terms of how can we cook faster, how can we, for instance, so that the consumption of LPG can be brought down to the minimum possible level. After all, at the end of the day, it's expensive fuel, and we are also heavily dependent on imports for LPG. There are lots of work going on that progress. The government is working in that direction. Companies like Indian Oil, Bharat Petroleum, Hindustan Petroleum, they are doing a lot of research and development in that direction.
So the latest we are getting from the LPG Week 2022 is that the Union Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, Honorable Minister Hardeep Singh Puri, has mentioned about QR codes which are being introduced in order to tackle pilferage and to track and trace these gas cylinders. In order to achieve inventory management, how would you rate this particular move for the benefit of the consumer?
There was a pilot project, and that we saw the companies moving aggressively in that direction, and there are now very strict directives from the ministry that they have to do it as aggressively as possible and be in a very foolproof manner, because in some parts of the country we have seen that pilferage has become a major issue, and also in some cases people are paying for the full cylinder, but they get it in their kitchen it's just half bottle in terms of LPG. So those challenges are there. So while the campaigns are going on, coordination is going on with various state governments depending on the quality of governance there. The companies are also making sure at the same time that it becomes impossible to do that. So the technology is being used, and there's the minister mentioned, for instance, and so on and so forth. Because of what the government concern is now, that all these people who have got the LPG cylinder in their kitchen, that they also get the value for their money. There have been far too many campaigns limited to some parts of the country, but there are more in one part of the country than the other. So the government is very sensitive to that, and therefore ask the companies to bring in the latest technology and make sure that the people who pay for the cylinder and that they get what they're paid for. So it's a little bit challenging task, because there are people, sometimes they are actually too innovative. Those challenges are always there. But I think with the new technology and all that, the companies are going to get there.
The standard gas cylinder is 14.2 kilograms, and non-subsidized gas cylinder at full capacity is estimated at 1,053 rupees. To what extent do you see the subsidy playing a very important role in getting access to this type of fuel for cooking?
Well, you see, interesting question. The way is how we look at it. For instance, thanks to the government Ujjwala policy, these companies, which may be state-owned but commercial entities at the end of the day, they are the biggest beneficiary also, in the sense that they get these consumers without much effort. So they've got the ready consumer. These consumers are going to stay with us in years, and they will be benefiting. The consumers, of course, but the companies also. So it depends. I mean, yes, subsidy, but when you take a long-term view and see that these companies have got now crores of new consumers, so good thing is that more and more kitchens have access to LPG, which is a cleaner fuel, good for the women there, good for children, good for old people, and at the same time people have access to better quality of fuel. But in terms of subsidy, yes, the government has done a lot, but we should really keep in mind that it's actually a win-win for both the companies and the consumer.
So we're looking at a subsidized rate of about 530 to 550 rupees per cylinder, which is roughly 50% versus the non-subsidized gas cylinder of 14.2 kilograms. So clearly the government is taking a hit in terms of expenditure, and there is also the direct bank transfer on 12 LPG cylinders a year per household, which some avail as well. What does this mean for the government's move towards humanizing energy?
Well, as you said, humanizing energy, when you do that and do it at such a fast pace the government has done in terms of Ujjwala, there is a cost. And it's very high cost, because LPG, as I said, is expensive. It's big part, chunk of that is also imported. The overall setting up the distribution network in rural areas, in the hinterlands and so on and so forth doesn't come cheap. So the billions have been spent on that in terms of rupees. So government is also taking the hit in terms of giving money to these companies, because these companies in turn have taken the hit. So government is subsidizing these companies also, which they have done recently, for instance. only just 4 weeks ago. Government gave them more than 20,000 crore plus to these companies, downstream companies, including ones responsible for the Ujjwala scheme. I think this all depends, as I said, how you look at it. But the question is, yes, there is a cost and the government is taking it. But at the same time, when you look at the benefits are tremendous, in terms of environment, in terms of health of our people, in terms of health of household, and most particularly the health of women and children. So the result is the overall health bill. There have been studies on that. Overall health bill of these households actually come down significant since they got the LPG cylinder. So there have been studies on that in Bihar, in Uttar Pradesh, in Assam, and parts of Bengal where this have been studied, and the result is that these households, overall, the medical bill has come down. So the point is that subsidy is not only in terms of only fuel, even the domestic health bill of these families per month has come down. So, and there are further studies being carried out in order to have more scientific data on that. But you talk to the family, which I have done, I have several such family visits in different parts of the country. Even, if you go by anecdotal evidence, very clear that is contributing to their health, helping them to basically cut their medical bill, and at the same time, overall environment in the household improves, when they know they have access to better quality of air, better fuel, and women go to the kitchen and they come out very fast. The amount of time they spend in the kitchen has come down by 70%. That's the experience I have gathered from my interactions with households in Uttar Pradesh and in Bihar. So overall, it's not only just the subsidy. When you look at, for instance, the benefits are tremendous and tremendous. It's an LPG. Ujjwala is nothing short, less than a revolution which is happening.
So we are basically drawing a comparison between the chula and the cooker, which is using LPG, where under the chula you're using coal or you're using burning wood, which is clearly inefficient as a type of fuel, plus it's extremely harmful to the vascular system of the person who is in the kitchen.
Ujjwala is not only about just having a red cylinder in the kitchen. It's much more. It's much beyond. Its contribution is tremendous. As he said, it brings a smile, it brings happiness in the family and in the household, and changes the way you look at your own life and the way you look at food, the way you look at family, that is amount of time you spend together and overall. So I think one has to go and experience and ask these questions, which I have done. And one woman told me, for instance, in Bulandshahr, village near Bulandshahr, she said, this little cylinder has actually brought us to the space. You see that kind of revolution. One has to really go and talk with those people who are the beneficiaries. And they never thought that they would ever have access to the LPG cylinder. They have it now, thanks to this scheme. So I think if you look at it from their viewpoint, then you get a completely different picture. And it's so nice to interact and talk with these people and the kind of joy that you can see in their eyes.
What are the other technological innovations that a consumer is likely to see apart from the QR codes?
I see the most important focus at this stage for LPG industry as a whole is to make it absolutely safe. LPG is a very, very safe fuel, but still sometimes you do hear of accidents here and there just because people have not been careful, or they have not been servicing their stove, or the pipe that they, for instance, connect cylinder to the stove has not been taken care of, or has not been replaced in time, or this has been serviced in time, and so on and so forth. So now the effort is more to make it absolutely sure. So training to people in the sense in terms of how to use LPG cylinder, making sure that it's serviced well, and if you're not being serviced, there are thousands of LPG service centers have been opened, so you are in connect with them. Now they are also reaching out how, for instance, to refill, how to basically change it and all that. So these are the kind of things focus on. But at the same time, do everything in such a way that even if you are not very, very careful, but still the LPG experience remains as safe as possible. So a lot of focus on that, research going on, and to make sure the LPG cylinders are kind of even better. There are also efforts to make a little bit some cylinder transparent so that you can see what's happening, when to go for a refill, and so on and so forth. So a lot of work is going on in that direction as well.
The gas cylinder we have has an analog meter to show what the pressure is. Do you see it move now towards introducing a digital meter perhaps for the benefit of the consumer?
The technology is there, but then you have to kind of, make sure that there is no spark. So in Indian context, focus now is basically the conventional cylinder, but how do you make it an absolutely safe thing? So focus is more on that. But that technology is also available and is being used in many places. And industrial, for instance, places you can see that, that's being already used. But the question is, when it comes to household, how do we make sure it's safe without actually adding to the cost? Because it's extremely cost sensitive. But eventually, probably things are going to go in that direction. The material may be replaced, material may be lighter. So a lot of work going on there to bring down the cost at the same time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taneja.
Thank you, Arjun.
You are listening to a discussion on LPG Week 2022, Humanizing Energy and Significance of Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Scheme. The participants were Narendra Taneja, Energy Expert, and Arjun J. Chaudhary, AIR Correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio.